Hello everybody, welcome back. Today I will be talking about Five Nights at Freddy's again. There has been debate in the community on whether or not Charlie Emily, the girl who goes on to possess the puppet and daughter of co-founder Henry Emily, died in either 1983 or 1987. People have even made the statement that she died in 1985 or 1979, but most of the debate has been surrounding whether or not she died in 1987 at the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 location or 1983. I believe she died in 1983, and I will attempt to prove that in this video. So, let me begin. In Five Nights at Freddy's 6 Pizzeria Simulator, in the Insanity ending, Henry Emily, her father, talks about a wound that was inflicted first upon him and that he let bleed out onto others. This can clearly be seen as an analogy for William Afton, his business partner and co-founder of Fazbear Entertainment, murdering his daughter, Charlie, and he allowed these murders to continue and led to the deaths of the 5 children in the missing children incident on June 26, 1985, and the dead children incident at the second Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria in 1987. And since he says that it was a wound that was first inflicted on him, that would mean that most likely the person who was first killed was Charlie. So that would mean that her murder would have to have happened prior to the June 26, 1985 missing children incident, where we know that the animatronics that possess Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, Foxy, and Golden Freddy happened and were killed. Now, I believe that she died in 1983 for a couple of reasons. First of all, we know that in the Midnight Motorist minigame, the secret section, we know it definitely for certain takes place right after the murder of her, as in the game files it's called Later That Night, and you start out in the game driving away down the highway. Now, the person in the bedroom who broke out is either Evan, the youngest brother who was killed in the Bite of 83, or Michael Afton. Now, if you believe it was Evan, then Charlie's murder would have had to have happened in 1983, as he died in that year. Now, if it was Michael, it would make more sense for him to be acting this kind of way in the following days or weeks after the Bite of 83, as he was the one who accidentally killed his brother. Now, we don't know who the person sitting in the couch is. It could be Michael, or it could be the mother. But from the way things sound, but things sound more like how it would sound if it was in the days, weeks after the Bite of 83. The person talked about how he's had a rough day. Leave him alone. And he's broken out of the window, gone to that place again. So, and if it is Michael, then it would make more sense for them to be talking about him like this in the immediate aftermath, because most likely William was probably very angry at him for doing this, and maybe took it out on him. And of course, he would probably be in a very depressive state. And if she had died in 1957, they would have most likely long been past that stage of grief. And Michael might even have moved out by 1987 if he was, let's say, 14 in 1983. He would have been 18, most likely moved out as soon as he could to get away from his father. And even if he was 17 or 16, they would have most likely been long past the stage of that initial stage. And I believe that the way that person talks to him, and even the way the person's acting, whoever broke out the window, is more in line with the immediate aftermath of the Bite of 83. Even if it's either Michael or Evan. Yeah, I just think it makes more sense that this happened sooner, after, most likely sometime early after 83. And William would have a bigger reason to kill, because his son was just died, while Henry has a daughter who's alive and well, and probably around his age, from what we see of her in the FNAF 6 minigame, probably around his same age, and maybe a little older. And if it's in a few days or weeks afterwards, he's probably still in a very angry and emotional about it, and that would give him extra reason to kill her, because this doesn't fit his MO at all. His MO is dressing up in a character costume, luring children to the back room, and killing them. But he just pulls up at the restaurant, kills her, drives away. This seems more like a heat of the moment thing. He was very emotional. And if you believe that the juniors is a bar, that could even be him being drunk, and it make more sense if he's in a severe state of drunkenness and drinking a lot in the immediate first few weeks or days afterwards. Yes, he would still. It's a high chance he could be alcoholic to get over it in the 4 years afterwards, but it just makes more sense that he would do something like this, just a random aggravated murder, if it's in the immediate days after the bite of 83, because he just lost his son, while Henry's Emily daughter is still alive and well. Now, alongside that, I believe that the Freddy Fazbear we see giving cake to children is more likely a man in a Springlock suit. Because we know from the FNAF 3 tapes that there were Springlock suits at Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. And we never hear anything about them, giving out cake to children. We just know that they walked around, but nothing about them, giving out cake and stuff. And the act of animatronic, serving cake and food to the children, seeing something more that would be done with a costume character rather than a robot, especially given the technology. Then yet again, FNAF is very advanced. I think most likely this is a Springlock suit, given how the actions needed to perform that. Sounds like something that would be needed more done by a human, and less likely to be able to be done by an animatronic. And we know that, and the Springlock suits were probably discontinued in 1985, shortly before the MCI. I will talk about this in another video tomorrow or sometime afterwards, but I'll get into that in another video. And back to the Midnight Motorist minigame, which we know takes place directly after this. The person sitting on a couch is bald, and we know these characters are pretty undetailed, but let's say this is the mom. In theory, that maybe in the short time after Evan ended up at the hospital, they had to shave his head because it had a severe head injury, and they probably needed to operate on his head or some kind, and they had to shave it, and maybe she shaved her head in support of her son, because they probably believe that, or just really, really hope that he could survive, he'll pull through it. And she did it so maybe that he wouldn't be so embarrassed or feel so bad about it when he see that his head is shaved, since they probably really did hope that he survived. So maybe she could have done that in solidarity of him when he woke up in their minds from a coma. They probably believed he would wake up, or at least hope so. So maybe that's why the person there is bald. It was the wife and mom of them trying to show solidarity to her son, either so because they probably had to shave his head, or so if he in their minds woke up from the coma, he wouldn't feel so bad about it. Now, and it just makes the most thematic sense in a storytelling wise for this to be the first killing, because the puppet's whole thing is that she protects the other kid. She even says so in What's My Custom Night. She says that the others are under her protection, the others are like animals, but she is very aware, and she's not afraid of William Afton anymore, because we know we're playing as William Afton in some kind of purgatory, or even HE double hockey sticks in What's My Custom Night. So it just makes most logical sense in thematic storytelling wise for her to have been his first victim, the first victim to go on to protect the others. And with what Henry says, it was a wound first inflicted onto him. He was the one who had his daughter killed first, and so she went on to try and protect the other ones. At least she attempted. She probably couldn't from the you can message you get in the saved minigame in FNAF 2 when a second massacre happens. And again, due to the way this killing is done, it makes more sense if it was just a heat of a moment thing, instead of him doing it either shortly before or doing it as a second killing. Because there's no way she was part of the DCI. She was killed outside of it. The DCI treasures strewn all about the restaurant. Why? I don't know. Maybe I'll get into it in another video. But still, the way the people at William's house act in it, it makes more sense that this was either or maybe shortly after the bite, or maybe even slightly before the bite, possibly. But I think more likely after the bite. That shortly after the bite is probably Michael, breaking out. Maybe the place he went to was Fredbear's go revisit the scene of when it happened to Navy, and it makes sense that this William's son died at the hands of his other son, and he was very sad and depressed about this because my kid's dead. Yes, he may be a psycho or a narcissist, whatever, really, and they don't really love their children. They see them as extensions of themselves, extensions of their ego, and a death of them might still hurt them in some way. I'm not a psychologist. Maybe it still did hurt them because it hurt his reputation, it hurt his franchise. He's mad about that. And well, he sees Henry's daughter still alive and well, so he kills her without maybe even being drunk. If you believe that Junior's is a bar. And maybe if Junior's, let's say, Fredbear's Family Diner, because we know that Fredbear's Family Diner is very close to the Afton house. So, that guy could be there, could be, I don't know, some kind of security, because they've shut the place down in the following days afterwards due to cleaning up, due to renovating the place, or they're just full on shutting down, this is the end of Fredbear's. But, of all that evidence, that's why I believe that Charlie Emily was killed by William Afton in 1983 outside of a Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, because that animatronic is clearly Freddy Fazbear. All variations of Fredbear have always been yellow. Every single version, no matter how different they look, it's always yellow, or some kind of shade of yellow. It's never been pure brown, because that color's more close to brown than even than yellow of any kind. So I believe that shortly after the bite of 83, Charlie Emily was killed by William Afton outside of a Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, most likely in some kind of act of some kind of heat of passion killing, or an act of maybe some kind of strange revenge, or just pure anger for having lost one of his children while his business partner had a living child who was alright. And since it was outside of the restaurant, it didn't hurt the franchise, it didn't hurt the brand, because somebody killed them outside, They didn't die at our place, Some guy just, got killed outside, If a person got killed outside of McDonald's, that was on McDonald's, no one blamed McDonald's for anything, Nothing would be on McDonald's, but if people were killed inside of McDonald's by, possibly for an employee, or something like that, then it would probably be on McDonald's, and most people just got killed at McDonald's by an employee, So that's probably why nobody not really mentioned in any newspapers was in FNAF 1, because it's about the MCI, of course, but also because it wouldn't be connected, because it's just so different, it wouldn't be connected. It wouldn't be on the company, because just something that happened outside of their perimeter, close to our perimeter, right outside of it. So that's why I believe this to be the fact. And that's why, at least in my personal opinion, I believe it to be true. And I hope that I have convinced you to at least hear me out, and maybe even maybe even that you believe me now in my idea that this is what the most likely canon is. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and you'll come back for future videos talking about the Five Nights at Freddy's lore. I hope you all have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Have a nice time.